Shabbat Shalom. Oh, God, we can do so much better. I know this temple. We can do so much better. There's just too much music going on. This is Shabbat Shalom. That's my Leo Beck temple. I'm still adjusting to this phenomenon of 7:30 starts to draw near, and everybody gets up from the picnic tables without me having to go and beat on them. That is the part. Yeah, that never happened. The pandemic grew everybody up like that. It's an incredible deal. Used to be me coming around like the shrew that I had to be. It's time to put the cheesecake away and come and have Shabbat services. Next thing you know, week after week, you guys just get up, come on in. It's all good stuff. It is such a pleasure to be in this gorgeous space as the beauty of the day is fading away. And we're going to make the transition into Shabbat in song. And we're going to, of course, have the gift of being with one another. And for those who are seated over on this side of the outdoor chapel, you've got an easy eye shot of the sun disappearing over the horizon. And by the time we're done, we will have not only sung and prayed Shabbat in, but we will also have, of course, experienced the Shabbat daylight, or the night, heading into daylight tomorrow already, also beckoning us into this Sabbath time and space. So I'm going to invite you to join in singing with me as a way of greeting one another, the words that are found at the top of page 10, words written by the psalmist long ago. Hine ma tov u'ma shevet achim gam yachad. How good, how pleasant it is for us to be together to welcome this Sabbath day. Please join your voices with mine. Hine ma tov u'ma shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'ma shevet achim gam. Sounds really nice. Hine ma tov u'ma shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'ma shevet achim gam yachad. Let's hear you sing it. Shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'ma shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'ma shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'ma shevet achim gam yachad. Say it like you mean it. Shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'ma shevet achim gam yachad. So I'm going to try to begin by answering a couple of questions that have come up already with many of you one-to-one. I should try to answer the questions so that you don't have to all ask the same question. So question number one is, what are you doing up there all by yourself? Where you got all those lovely people who are on the team? Where are they? They're on vacation. They're refreshing. It's good. They're Shabbat vayinafash. I rested and I was refreshed. Refreshed. I rested and I was refreshed. I rested and I was refreshed. That's what we're taught to do with Shabbat. Sometimes Shabbats can actually take on the dimensions of a full week or two. And so they're in the business of refreshment right now before they get back to business. That's all good. So you have me as your rabbi and your fake cantor for the night. And so we're just going to get by as best as yes. And we got Abigail. So Abigail may come and be the fake cancer tonight if she would like. You're welcome to do so if you like. So that's answer question number one. Very good. Drew loves that idea. I can see that. That's good. Drew is loving that idea as we speak. So the second question is, Rabbi, what happened to your head? So the Peachy's like, yeah, what did happen to your head? I know she does not like when that. But here's the thing. See, I believe it was the great sages Martha and the Vandellas, I'm pretty sure, who once taught, the summer's here and the time is right for removing all my hair. And so that's how we did it. The good news is, at least for me, so far, so good. It actually grows back. So it will be visiting you again soon. But right now, it looks okay, says Sandy Savet. It's good. Sandy Savet says it looks okay, so we're all good. Peachy, not so sure, but hey, everybody has their opinion about the rabbi's hair, whether it be short or long, but nobody has a negative opinion about Martha and the Vandellas, so that part, I know we're safe on that part. We are going to join together in a few moments in singing. We can actually do this sort of, the verse gets sung together, and the words are found on page 18. For those of you joining us on screen, the online prayer book has all of these pages as well. And so if you go to the online prayer book found at leobecktemple.org/live, that will bring you to our webpage that has access to the online prayer book, and you can follow along as well as you're praying with us. The lines we'll be singing are the second, third, fourth, and fifth lines of Psalm 29 on page 18. There's a chorus that's basically call and response. So even if you've never heard it before, we'll be able to sing this together. But before we do so, just some words of poetry to kind of escort us into having a little bit of... Sounds good, I think. A little bit of poetry to escort us into the spirit of Shabbat. The fact that we've arrived at this moment in time, or even at this space, this place, does not automatically create Shabbat. We actually have to use all of these tools in the toolbox given to us by the mystics who created Kabbalat Shabbat. We have to use those tools to actually create the spirit of Shabbat in our own hearts and souls and between one another. And there's no better way, as I wrote about today in the email that was sent out to all of you, no better way for us to actually make that happen, to make that leap, than for us to join together in Shabbat community. And so these words of poetry to escort us in. This is it. To come from the blazing sunlight into the dim quiet of our praying place. This is the great warmth and at-homeness. This is the knowledge of belonging, the loneness merging into a strong oneness, one lost drop of water finding its way into the sea. The Torah sheds a glow, gleams white and silver, as we stand singing and praying, our hearts warm with peace, our spirits quiet in the quietness of Shabbat. This is the end of the week, and it's beginning. This is the moment of pause, the refilling of the empty vessel, the renewing of the empty spirit. Whatever in you has been emptied out during this last week, if you've come to us on E in any way, let this Shabbat experience we're about to create with one another kick you up to F. We're on page 18, beginning with the second line. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, oh, hey. Havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim. Havu l'Adonai kavod va'os. Havu l'Adonai kivod shemo. Histachavu l'Adonai b'hadrat kodesh. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, oh, hey. Try it again. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, oh, hey. Try it with me. Havu l'Adonai. Havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim. Havu l'Adonai kavod va'os. Havu l'Adonai kivod shemo. Histachavu l'Adonai b'hadrat kodesh. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, hey, ho, hey. Hey, oh, hey. Those words are a celebration of ascribing to God, to the mystery, to the all of the unknown in our lives, but that which brings us blessing, glory, strength, gratitude, to sense in it majesty and holiness, to take notice of all those things that fill our lives with goodness, the air that we breathe, the love that we share, the nourishment that sustains our bodies and our spirits, and instead of taking it for granted, stopping, naming it, noticing it for blessing. That is what we're singing about. And it's the reason why Shabbat, because it has that capacity to summon that from us in a way that the other days it's harder for us to get there. We're busy creating, rushing from place to place and building our world, creating the world that we wish to create. Shabbat is supposed to be that time where we take notice. And it's the reason why we are to experience this moment, the arrival of Shabbat, with that same sort of anticipation that we might if all of the hope and possibility of a bride entering the room. If we were to experience that, that's what Shabbat is supposed to be. That's why the mystics came up with l'chadodi as the metaphor for us. Come, let us meet the bride. We're on page 20 and 21. We'll be singing verses 1 and 2 on page 20 and verses 5 and 9 on page 21. So that's the first two verses on 20, top and bottom verses on 21. We hope you'll sing with us. L'chadodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat mikabela L'chadodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat mikabela שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד השמיענו אל המיוחד Adonai echad u'shemo echad v'shem u'tiferet v'litihila lecha dodi likrat kalav pnei Shabbat nikabelav lecha dodi likrat kalav pnei Shabbat nikabelav likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם ניסוחה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Top of 21. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, אורי אורי שדברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Some of you are already doing it. If you're able, you can stand and face the entrance to this chapel and let your soul's eye see her, Shabbat the bride. Welcome her into your heart, into your life. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלם, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני העם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. 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 Stay right where you are. You look great. You look great. Stay right where you are. Baruch Hu is found on page 28. Adonai המבורך לעולם ועד. יאי לי 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 יאי לי 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 יאי לי 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 We're already noticeably closer on the horizon to the full arrival of evening. And the evening prayer service always includes some words of prayer to acknowledge the arrival of night and the way that the planets do their thing, rotating in a reliable fashion such that we have come to know day and night seasons. All of the compendium that we now know as time and what to expect. We usually don't spend a whole lot of time standing back in wonderment at it. We love it if it happens to be a really beautiful night and you're not in LA and you can look up into the sky and you can see all the stars. Then maybe you take notice. Maybe. That's only a maybe. And if short of that, for the most part, it's just like, oh, I look at my watch, it's night or it's day. The service is supposed to help us to awaken our sensibilities of just how miraculous all of this is. And so the prayer that I want to share with you to hold that space tonight is actually, well, I don't know that he would have considered it a prayer, but I consider it a prayer. These are the words from Walt Whitman on exactly that. He wrote, "When I heard the learned astronomer, when the proofs, the figures, were arranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and diagrams to add, divide, and measure them, when I sitting heard the astronomer, when he lectured with much applause in the lecture room, how soon, unaccountably, I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out, I wandered off by myself in the mystical, moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars." Amen. Page 34. I am here, I am now, asking when, asking how, only I, only thou, only one. Fill my heart, still my soul, I am part of this whole. I will sing out my soul to the one. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Adonai Baruch Shem Kivod, Shem Kivod, Malchuto, Leolam, Leolam, Vaed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Adonai Echad. On page 36. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. How many of you in our Reform movement go all the way back to what is lovingly referred to by us old-timers of the Reform movement, UPB? Anybody know what UPB stands for? I'm seeing some hands popping up. What does it stand for? Say it out loud. The Union Prayer Book. Yeah. So I'm seeing some hands of, I go back all the way to that. I'm seeing some hands that have thumbs that go like this. It's an interesting thing. Here's the deal. See, we call ourselves, a really important point. If you've ever heard somebody say, oh, well, I'm like part of, Reformed Judaism, remove that ED, right? Reformed Judaism would be done reforming. And so we would still be in UPB land forever. Just as 50 years from now, they'd be stuck singing Hey, Hey, Away, right? So the idea is that we are constantly a work in progress. We are constantly accessing new ways to access our tradition and to experience it with one another. And yet there are gems that connect us to yesteryear and that will also connect us forward as well. The words that are found at the bottom of page 39 were placed into this Mishkan Tefillah, this current movement prayer book. It's a relatively new prayer book. Prayer book only goes back about 15 years, this book that you're holding in your hands. And so when they were in the middle part of the first decade of this century, editing this book, they included, and this was not the only place that they did it, they lifted some beautiful words. There was beautiful poetry, whether it was your style of Reform Judaism or not. There were some extraordinary, poetic, really profound words. There was an elegance to the way in which the language that we prayed with back then. The resistance from some today is that because it was so elegant, it doesn't necessarily feel like how I speak. It doesn't feel quite as intimate or as imminent as we're used to prayer being here in 2021. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't every now and then dip into those waters. And so in year 2005 or so, when this book was edited, they lifted those words from the books. I think the first edition of the UPB, I believe, was completed or somewhere between 1930 and 1940. So that's what these words go back to. Bottom of page 39. I invite you to read with me. They're really beautiful words, and what an important sentiment for us to dip into as we prepare for Michamocha tonight. Please join with me. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and your love. From bondage in Egypt, we were delivered. At Sinai, we bound ourselves to your way. inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. We'll add the words, Mi chamocha, Mi chamocha, Ba'elim Adonai, Mi chamocha, Nedar b'kodesh Nora Tehillah Oseh Feleh Nora Tehillah Oseh Feleh Micha Mocha Ba'elim Adonai Mika Mocha Nedar B'kodesh. Nighttime creeping in more and more. We're relying more on the electric lights surrounding us to help us find the words in our prayer book. Let us take note of the darkness and not only the beauty of the horizon as we start to dip into nighttime, but also give voice to all the uncertainty, the unrest that darkness brings to us, whether it's metaphorical darkness in our hearts and our lives, or the physical darkness, the ones that the darknesses that tend to bring those monsters out of the closet in our rooms. Something we can relate to from when we're young children, but never really fully goes away. It just shows up in other ways. That's why we pray, Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'Shalom. Cause us, when we're in that darkness, to experience peace, not trouble. And so that when the night is over and the morning light returns, we are ready to embrace light and life. The words can be found in the supplemental page that you received along with your prayer book in the bottom right-hand corner. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'Shalom, L'Shalom, V'ha'amidenu Malkeinu L'chaim, Ufros aleinu Sukat Shlomecha, Sukat Shlomecha, Ufros aleinu Sukat Shlomecha. Amen. Shelter us beneath thy wings, shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. Amen. hear you sing it. The perfect half moon has just been pointed out to me, so wherever you're seated, you can see it. Look up in the sky. If you're at home, you might want to look out a window. See that perfect half moon becomes more and more visible, becomes a brighter light in the sky as the darkness envelops the other corners of the galaxies all around us. We are on page 46. Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. You've heard it once. Hope you'll join with me. If you're not yet standing and you're able to do so, I invite you to stand at this time. And we'll join in these words again, page 46. Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Ufi Yagid Tehiratecha Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot U'Mevii Geula Livnei V'neihem L'man Shemo B'Yava Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah Ata Gibor Leolam Adonai Mechayei Kol Ata Rav Lehoshia Morid Hata Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechayei Kol Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem emunato nishenei afar Micha mocha ba'al gevurot Umido melach Melech meimit umechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman ata l'chayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai mechaye hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Continue the Amidah in silence through page 60 of the prayer book. It's also a time to dip into your own heart for the prayers that reside there. You can feel free to remain standing or to be seated whenever you're ready. On page 60. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim leolam. B'tov b'necha levarech et Amcha Yisrael bechol et ubechol shah bishlomecha. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. I'm curious. Is that a bird that's singing harmony with me? Anybody know any like birdists out there who know what kind of bird is singing harmony with us? It was a Kate's. It was the mid-Atlantic Kate's bird. Yes. Kendra Cates, where are you? I don't know, but there's a beautiful, it's singing with us. It's kind of, I don't know if you noticed, like in all the little pauses, it sang for us. Pretty nice. Tzipora bird, there you have it. We are going to have a very special moment that we all get to share in here tonight, and I have to ask the guest of honor for this moment, Vic Stern, if you would like to receive this special blessing I'm about to share with you from your seat, which you can do. You can stay there, or you can come up if you'd like to stand a little closer to me. Entirely up to you. Your choice. Outstanding. I'm going to describe for all of you as Vic is coming to join us. I have been honored in my career. Oh, look at him go. Goodness gracious, Vic. He's a speedster. Vic, I have been honored. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, you can come a little closer if you want. Come stand right here. Absolutely. I have been honored to give a lot of blessings in my career. Comes with being a rabbi, and that includes a lot of birthday blessings. But I'm pretty sure this is my first time having the honor of bestowing a 93rd birthday blessing on the actual day of 93. Today, Shabbat Shalom to Vic and all of you. 80, I know I've done. 90, I got that one circled. And some might be tempted to wait, right? Say, well, let's do 95. Let's do 100, which incidentally, come on back. We'll do them. But that is not what you chose to do, nor is it what our tradition would ever imagine having you do. Because we are taught as Jews to bless each and every day, much less every year. And in the eyes of our Jewish tradition, Vic, being older is most definitely being better. I know you may be wondering about that. But seriously, if you talk to the people who are responsible for shaping public perception here in the 21st century in our news and advertisements and TV shows and movies and the like, you will not actually get the impression that being older is being better. But in Judaism, it absolutely is. We learn a great deal about our tradition's message for a moment like this from the way law is interpreted and understood in Judaism. That is to say, for the older that a law is in Judaism, the more authoritative it is deemed to be, the more precious it is held to be. Medieval law is assigned higher authority than contemporary law and Talmudic law, more authority than medieval law, and of course go back all the way to the Torah, and that always holds sway over any rabbinic law that comes along later. In our community, Vic, and in the lives of your loved ones, that's for sure, so many of whom are here with us to celebrate tonight, you possess that kind of authority. You know that living to 93 brings strength, not weakness. And this is the strength to know that compassion comes from seeing that everyone is capable of foolishness and that no one is immune to pain. The strength to exude humility, to know that not all aspirations can be realized and that success can sometimes strike without warning. You surely know as well, Vic, that the strength of 93 is definitely not physical. 93 surely brings its aches and its pains, its concessions to time. The strength of 93, Vic, is strength of character, the strength of accumulated wisdom and love that has sufficient time to well up inside you. For the rabbis of the Talmud had it right when they wrote that with age comes wisdom, and with length of days, understanding. Vic, our prayer for you on this night of blessing is that your strength, your wisdom, your understanding, your love will continue to build. And for the blessing that you've given all of us, by inviting us to share in this simcha in your life with you, we ask God's blessing upon you. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you safe for all the years to come. May God's light shine on you just as brightly as you are shining light on all of us by enabling us to share in your simcha. May God's presence always be felt deep within you, around you as well, guiding you toward every blessing of love, health, and peace. And we'll add ad mea ve'esrim, Hebrew words that mean until 120. Now, he may be thinking to himself, I don't know, 120. Judaism says 120. Why? Moses, we are told, made it all the way to 120. And so we say, ad mea ve'esrim, may all of the birthdays to come be filled with blessing. And if you give us the privilege of bringing blessing to you on those two, we'll circle those on our calendar and look forward with much love and joy as well. Tonight, I want to invite our entire community to sing words of blessing. If you just turn around to face them, not me, you can see everybody. It's up to you. You could stay here. You can go back to your seat too. Watch your step, though. I want to make sure you don't get hurt. Oh, careful. You can stay. You can go. Whatever you want. It's all good. I want you to have a chance to see them, though, not me, because they're going to be singing for you right now. So you guys can, if you want, you can sort of turn around. You can even come stand over here, just so you can see everybody. I want to make sure you can see it. Oh, careful, careful. The blessing for a moment that is rich with beauty. Thank you, God, for giving us the gift of life and sustaining us so that we might all reach this moment with Vic and his family. Please join with us. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Mazal Tov, Vic. Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, Yehelanu, 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 Ulechol Yisrael, Yehelanu, Yehelanu, Ulecho Yisrael, Yehelanu, Yehelanu, Ulecho Yisrael, Yehelanu, Yehelanu, Ulecho Yisrael. Vic, you've inspired them to start breaking out in spontaneous song. It's not bad. Nice work. Ad mea ve'esrim. Keep coming back for all of them. They break out in spontaneous blessings. It's good stuff. So this week we begin our study of the fifth and final book of the Torah, as I wrote in the message that was sent to you all a little earlier today. Book is known in English by the name Deuteronomy, but known in Hebrew by the name Devarim, words. It is Moses' book. Moses, known in our tradition as the first ever rabbi. We don't think of him as a rabbi in any normative sense, but he's called Moshe Rabbeinu. Moses, our rabbi, our teacher. And he fits the description perfectly of a rabbi. After all, at first, at the burning bush, Moses insists that he is not a man of Devarim, not a man of words. You can probably remember that story that he says he has nothing to say, and that is at the beginning of his career. And now as his career is winding down in the fifth of the 5 books, he decides to write 1/5 of the Torah himself and speak it personally to all of his congregants. At first, he protested that he really need not be called upon to speak at all. Now he won't shut up. and sadly, the implications for all of you here at Leo Beck Temple. Since I am just shy of 56 years old, this means that services in the year 2025 will have to include an intermission. We'll do the best we can to not reach Mosesian heights with regard to the language. But alas, we are not there yet, and I can actually verify that my remarks about this week's Torah portion tonight are actually going to be brief, because I'm going to share with you a brief chapter that I wrote about this portion in a book that was published just a few years ago, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, I think. The book is entitled Text Messages, and it's a book I would love for a lot of members of our congregation to have. Text Messages, it is, to my knowledge, the first ever Torah commentary published for and about teenagers. It is a teen Torah commentary. So, teen-centered lesson for each weekly portion in the Torah. Certainly the need for such a commentary is as old as the Torah itself, but this volume appears to be the first serious effort to respond to that need. And I was honored to be among the list of rabbinic voices that were asked to write one of the commentaries. It's something that I get to do from time to time. In fact, there's a brand new book. It's actually not even released yet, but very, very soon to be released. Published later this year, called the Social Justice Torah Commentary. One social justice teaching for each Torah portion written by a different rabbi. Again, I was delighted to be invited to be one of the writers. That's not this week's Torah portion. I'd share that one with you, but that was Parshat Balak a few weeks ago. In this particular book, though, tonight it was easy. My chapter in Text Messages and this week's Torah portion happened to line up perfectly. And I usually struggle with coming up with how do I share the content of these chapters that I write with our congregation. Well, lo and behold, I happen to be leading services tonight, so it's a perfect opportunity to do so. So these were my words in the first ever teen-oriented Torah commentary, a little adapted for our purposes here tonight, since a few of us here tonight are teenagers at heart. Let's put it that way. There you go. I spent most of my childhood wanting to grow up as quickly as possible. I was one of those kids. My older brother was always 3 years ahead of me in the race to independence. My parents are watching this service right now online. They remember as well. At first, I resented his later bedtime than mine. As we grew, it was his later curfew that seemed especially unjust. It felt like I would be a child forever. My frustration frequently tumbled out of me in anger directed at my parents. Sorry, Mom and Dad. I railed against their hypocrisies, picked at their emotional vulnerabilities, and demanded my respect and my freedom. Liberation. Our house was often overrun with the sound of slamming doors. My parents, of course, were bewildered by my rage. Usually they couldn't even see it coming. The very actions they took with hopes of granting me a better future were the ones that intensified my rebellion. The more they loved me by establishing the expectations, the more deliberately I rejected those expectations, determined to prove myself a worthy adversary. Back then, I felt that my oppression was somehow unique to my family. However, now that I have teenage children of my own, at the time I wrote these words, 2 of my kids were teenagers. Now only one of them is a teenager. The other 2 are actually beyond teenage life. But that doesn't mean that we don't still get some, teen angst, just, post-teen angst. Now that I have teenagers and have raised teenagers, I have come to regard the sometimes violent push and pull of adolescence as something necessary, common, painful, and yet strangely holy. Perhaps that is why it is sanctified in the Torah, in the relationship between God, the parent, and the adolescent Israelites. In this week's Torah portion, Parshat Devarim, the first portion in the 5th of the Torah's 5 books, Moses addresses the Israelites as they prepare to enter the promised land at last. And he opens with a reminder of how things were between God and the Israelites back when the relationship was young. God, the parent, was embraced by the people. Promises were made and kept. The people grew in number. They consented to the plans that were laid for them. But then Moses recalls, as the Israelites grew into their bond with God, the story became more complicated. God's endless rules became irritating to them. And the final straw came when God told them that it was time to enter the promised land. They simply were not interested in doing as they were told. They had plans of their own. Moses' description of what comes next reminds me of my childhood home, sounding an awful lot like my father did during my teenage years, or perhaps just as much like I do when I've just had it with one of my own teenagers. Moses bursts out saying the following: "Yet you refused to go up and flouted the command of the eternal your God. You sulked in your tents and said, 'It is because Adonai hates us that he brought us out of the land of Egypt.'" That's from the Torah. A teenage tantrum in the Torah. If there had been doors upon those tents of theirs, they would surely have been slamming. But think about what Moses tells us those adolescent Israelites said. God, the parent, hates God's children? The accusation is met with a defense that sounds familiar to anyone who has ever accused his or her parent of hatred. If you ever said you hate me, you probably got something like this back. Says Moses, also directly from the Torah. You saw how the eternal your God carried you as a parent carries a child. And yet for all that you have no faith. Nowadays, when tensions in my home rise, I sometimes find myself lingering in sweet memories of how it used to be. Back when my teenagers were toddlers that I carried in my arms. Some of you remember those toddlers. But I know that it can't stay that way. It's not supposed to stay that way. I don't even want it to stay that way. The rebellion must happen. It enabled the Israelites ultimately to grow up, to discover a new trust with their parent, and to follow their own path into the promised land. And it will enable my children to do the same. All of our children. The medieval Jewish sage, Hasdai ibn Crescus, taught these words, and anyone who's ever been in my confirmation class before has studied these words with me before. I'm looking around, there's a few confirmands who've done this lap with me, and some of you who are a little bit younger, someday, 10th grade, we'll study this together. This is medieval Jewish sage writes these words. Your child is at 5 your master, at 10 your servant, at 15 your double. The kids never laugh like that when I say that line. But when the grown-ups are around, they're like, ha, 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 I get it, exactly. Your child is at 5 your master, at 10 your servant, at 15 your double, and after that, your friend or foe, depending upon his or her upbringing. Truer words were never spoken. Growing up is a wild ride. We don't get to stay for very long at any one stop along the way. And so since we can, in fact, be sure that we won't be children forever, our best bet may be simply to trust that the necessary, common, painful, and yet strangely holy journey, rebellions and all, leads to the promised land. Now, I want to throw in a little, so that's it. I'm only 56, or 55 still, not even 56 yet. So that's all I got in terms of words. But I do want to add a little coda to this teaching for tonight, because some years before I wrote that commentary on this week's Torah portion, my songwriting partners and me in our Jewish musical band, Matovu, it's performed here a number of times, we were commissioned to write a song about this same week's Torah portion for a collection. They went to, I think, whatever it must have been, 50-something contemporary Jewish composers, and asked for a song for each of the Torah portions, and it's a phenomenal collection of works. And we were asked to write a song about this text, about this same wrestling match between God the parent and all of us perpetual rebellious teenagers that we call the Jewish people. We too need our reminders that the journey, even the parts that make us slam our doors and burst forth in adolescent anger, no matter how past adolescence we may see ourselves being, that all of it is a part of what gets us to the promised land. And so leap of faith is necessary to believe that that's where it's going. Some of you, I'm looking around at some of your eyes, remembering what it was like when you were coming to me bemoaning the experience with your own teenagers. It's amazing to be in one place long enough to have had that journey with so many different folks who are here with us praying tonight. You trusted that the journey led to the promised land, and lo and behold, you're finding your way, they finding their way to places of promise, are they not? And so this is our musical interpretation on that same text. These are the words, Divarim, these are the words. If I'm asked to publish anything else on this Torah portion, I'll see you next year. This is it. These are the words that were said after 40 years of wandering. 40 years of wandering, these are the words. Moses spoke these words. He told the tale. The reasons for our wandering, the lessons of our wandering, he spoke these words. God carried you like a parent does a child. God carried you all our years. God carried you, but you did not believe. Einhem ma'aminim b'Adonai. We read these words, return to these words. The story of our wandering, the reason we are wandering is found in these words. Through all the pain, despite all the pain, God is there, God cares for us. So why is it so hard for us to say these words? God's carried us like a parent does a child. God's carried us all our years. God's carried us, but we do not believe. Einenu ma'aminim b'Adonai. We know these words. We are these words. All of us are wandering, learning from our wandering, learning from these words. Sometimes I know it's true. Sometimes I know for sure. I'm sure that God is carrying me. I know that God is carrying me, and I know these words. God carry us like a parent does a child. God carry us all our years. God carry us. Help us to believe. Anu ma'aminim b'Adonai. Anu ma'aminim b'Adonai. It's still Shabbos. We, in so many of our conversations, those of us who are here for dinner and we're enjoying each other's company, just schmoozing with each other, we're all of us, whether you had a chance to be a part of those conversations, and now we are feeling the creeping presence once again of this awful virus. Aware of the change in the rules from the Department of Public Health pertaining to masking indoors again. We're watching things revert a little bit, only a little bit so far, thank God, and hopefully we will have the will and the wisdom as people in this country to fend that off. But we are perhaps, by comparison to recent weeks, newly cognizant that even though we have the gift of sitting here, being here with one another, it's not like COVID is over. We're getting a brutal reminder it is not. And so there are those throughout our country, throughout the world, who are battling mightily with this virus, and all of us who still carry around very real fears of it. And of course, there are so many different experiences that cause us the experience of ailment, right? To feel what it is to not be right, whether it's physical illness, whether it's emotional brokenness, whether it's disillusionment over the fact that we can't seem to unite as a people and as a world to get this right, to get so many things right, whether it's just despair that comes with the darkness that settles in within us, not just around us. Whatever it is that may be holding your heart, whether it comes from your own sense of being unwhole in the moment, or whether it's a loved one, a cherished friend, someone else who would benefit from healing. As we gather together on this Shabbat, creating all this joy and beauty with one another, we need to be reservoirs of that for those who are struggling the most. And so if you are thinking of someone on this Shabbat, personal, friend, family member, whoever it may be, that you'd like to include in our collective prayer for healing and strength on this Shabbat, I invite you at this time to stand if you're able. And I'll just make eye contact with you so that you can speak those names aloud to our congregation. For those of you at home as well, please feel free to speak names aloud. Right on. for all of them, for all of us at this time of so much uncertainty, for all those who are caregivers and are working so hard to keep us safe and healthy. We join together in prayer for healing, strength, encouragement, light. The words can be found in the middle of page 253 in the prayer book. Mi sheberach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishebeira imotenu mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We continue with Aleinu, which can be found at the bottom of page 282. If you're able, please rise. Aleinu lishabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liyotzeh breshit, shelo asanu kegoyei aratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Page 287. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד. These words to help us prepare for the recitation of Kaddish, words not found in the prayer book. We who remember are artists, aerialists on a swinging trapeze, letting go one ring to catch another. Hold on and let go, hold on and let go. A subtle duality that endows our life with meaning, neither denying the past nor foreclosing the future. We are part of the flow of life, the divine process which gives and takes, creates and retains. We too must give and take, seize, hold, and release. Adonai gives and Adonai takes. Blessed be the name of God's sovereign glory. As we prepare to recite the Kaddish prayer this evening, we remember especially Susan Barron Franklin, whom death has taken from us in recent days. And we link her name with Florence Bell, Sherwood Beers, Fanny Billett, Doris Chartrand, Abraham Jacob Cohen, Abraham Davidson, Stanley Davidson, Mildred Davidson, Hattie E. Desser, Grace Eileen Echito, Florence Flom Daniels, Ida Fry, Louise Weinman Girdwin, Bertram Given, Eva Leah Gunther, Esther Gutlin, Miriam Heinrich, Bernard Human, Risa Howard, Benjamin Harris Lautman, Hyman Lieber, Helen Marpet, Karen Peltz, Bill Rubin, Mildred Schultz, Erwin Segan, Israel Snyder, J. Edgar Spitz, Alan Stein, Geraldine Turkenik, Shirley Ward, Lily M. Worth, Sima Wessler. Are there other names we should include? If so, please speak them aloud. We think as well, of course, of all those who we name in our hearts and the millions of victims of COVID-19 all over the world. We think also of those who have perished as innocent victims of violence in a world that we must lead to peace. Holding them all close at heart, we say, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the memory of the righteous is an everlasting blessing. As together, we give thanks for the blessing of life with the words of Mourner's Kaddish found on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yitalal, shemei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hui aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru, amen. May the giver of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved among us, and let us together say, amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Shabbat shalom.